Hello, I'm Mr. Baker, and this is today's presentation in the unit on evolution. And we're going to talk about evidence of evolution, which includes fossil, molecular, biogeographic, embryological, and various observational clues. First, the fossil evidence of evolution shows some of the most significant evidence of evolutionary change. And we can compare fossils and show that ancient species have some similarities to current one. And we can also show that some species have remained unchanged for millions of years. One of the biggest factors is a transitional fossil, which is an intermediate form between species, which contains features shared by different species. The hallmark of this is Archaeopteryx, which shows the intermediate between a bird and a dinosaur, where it has some features of dinosaurs and some features of birds, like a toothed beak, which is reptilian, a wing claw, which is reptilian, but we've got feathers, airfoil wing with contour feathers, which is definitely a bird thing. There's a picture of the actual Archaeopteryx that was found. There are two major classes of traits that you see in these transitional fossils. Derived traits, which are the new ones. For example, in Archaeopteryx, it's the feathers. And in the ancestral traits that come from the earlier features, such as teeth, claws, and the tail. We can also use comparative anatomy. These are homologous structures, showing the arm bones of various organisms that all come from the first tetrapod that had one large bone, two smaller bones, a group of bones for what became the human wrist, and then ray bones, which became our fingers. And you can see this replicated in lizards, cats, whales, bats, frogs, and birds. Analogous structures do the same function but have no evolutionary connection, like the wings of birds and insects. They both allow them to fly, but they have no evolutionary connection. Another clue are vestigial structures, reduced forms of functional structures that are found in other organisms, like the pelvis in snake, wings in ostrich because they don't fly, but they still have them, the human appendix, which is a vestigial structure from the multiple stomachs from our ruminant ancestors, and the eyes of cavefish. Here's a picture where you've got the top cavefish that is found in Mexico, and then that's the living out in the wild, and then you have the one that's found in the cave where the eyes have all but disappeared. You can also look at embryos, which are the pre-birth stage of an organism's development. They look similar during certain phases of the development, but then become totally different as different genes are turned on that become different things. So here you have a picture showing fish, salamander, tortoise chicks, rabbit, and humans at their various stages and their similarity early on, but as you get more and more growth, you then differentiate. What has become big is the molecular evidence of evolution, which shows sequence homology between proteins and DNA and RNA. And it suggests that these genes were evolved early on and then were passed through ancient species to our modern ones. One great example of this is the human chromosome, the human chromosomes when compared to chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans. Gorillas, orangutans, and chimps all have 24 sets of chromosomes, and humans have 23, and that's because there was a fusion event that took two chromosomes and put them together to form our chromosome 2. That's in the middle of the picture. We are on the left-hand side of that group of 4, and then in the chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans, you can see that they are two separate chromosomes. Further clarifying that, you can see that you've got centromeres, telomeres, and this is definitely a fusion event showing that we have evolved and that we share those chromosomes with our ancestors, except that they have been fused together. Another great piece of evidence is biogeographic, and the best example of those are islands. And this is what Darwin used when he was looking at the Galapagos Islands. And he said, hey, these organisms on the Galapagos are very similar to the things living in South America. Australia and its marsupials are also another great example. Adaptation is a trait shaped by natural selection that increases an organism's reproductive success. It means it gives an advantage to survive and reproduce. Let's reiterate the fact that you do not evolve. You survive and reproduce, or you do not get to survive and reproduce. So an individual does not evolve. Its lineage can evolve if it has an adaptation. We put that into a term called fitness, and that is a measure of the relative contribution a trait will make to the next generation. And pretty much is the number of surviving offspring produced. If you can produce more offspring that survive, you are more fit. There are a myriad of examples, but the one we chose to focus on here is camouflage. And if you can hide in with your environment, that is a lizard on a log, which is really difficult to see, surprisingly. You can either hide from predators or sneak up on your prey. One type of camouflage is called cryptic coloration, and that's hiding. Background matching, where you blend into the background. You have from left to right a walking stick. There is a owl that really looks like a piece of wood. I believe it's a jaguar at the bottom and a cheetah at the upper right. For more of this type of background matching, flounders that hang out, or halibuts, a fish that can hang out at the bottom and bury itself. You have some type of insect there that looks like leaves, and a tiger that hides in the bamboo. Sidewinder in the sand, and that's an Arctic fox in the snow. And then you have another type of coloration called aposematic. Aposematic is a warning. It comes from the Greek word apo, meaning away, and sema, meaning sign. It's like a sign that says, hey, stay away, I'm bad news. All of these organisms here on this slide are advertising that, hey, you don't want to mess with me, it might not be pleasant for you. That brings us up to a topic of mimicry. And when you mimic, you look like someone else. There are two main types of mimicry, Müllerian and Batesian. Müllerian mimics, those are the ones that match. M for Müllerian, M for match. These are like bees. The yellow and black stripes all say, hey, we'll sting you. Batesian mimics are fakers, bull hockey. These are like king snakes that mimic coral snakes. And they are saying, we're liars and we just look like we pack a punch. And they're pretty much riding on the coattails of those that actually produce the venom. These are all packing poison. There's a picture of various types of stinging insects that have the very familiar yellow and black. That's very easily seen. And here are monarch butterflies and viceroy butterflies. And it used to be thought that the viceroys were riding on the coattails of the monarch, but it turns out viceroys also have bad taste in them. So they are both Müllerian mimics. Batesian mimics involve those freeloaders. Here is a king snake in the bottom right and a eastern coral snake. Eastern coral snakes are relatives of the cobras, and they pack a pretty good amount of poison. And the way you remember this is red next to black, friend of Jack. Red next to yellow, kill a fellow. And that's the coloration. However, we might be able to make a little rhyme, but if you're a potential predator that would like to eat a snake and you see it out in the wild, you don't have the time to look at that and clearly figure out which one it is, so you leave them both alone. Again, Batesian mimics looks like something poisonous, so here are Müllerian mimics on the right, a bee and a wasp. Those can both sting, and then there is a hoverfly, which has incorporated the yellow and black, and people tend to leave it alone, although it is clearly a fly, and it doesn't have any venom. You can also have disruptive coloration, which is where you look like something you're not. These are eye spots on moths, so somebody coming in and going, oh, hey, I've got a meal, and that looks like the eyes of an owl, which is a larger predator, and it might freak them out and leave the moth alone. There are all kinds of other colorations we don't have time to get into, like those for attracting mates. Parrots, brightly colored, that's for attracting mates. Peacocks and peahens, that's a male showing off, and that has no advantage for him for flying or anything like that. It's just to impress his mate. Other animals perform rituals, bighorn sheep, and there's a link there that you might be able to click on the PDF version that'll take you and show you what the birds of paradise do. And those birds are crazy, the dances they do. It's cool to watch. So, for your quiz for 10.4, we expect you to understand the evidence of evolution consisting of fossils, various types of comparative anatomy, embryology, molecular DNA and proteins, biogeographic, the adaptations for islands, and camouflage, aposematic mimics, Mollerian, and Batesian. Thank you, and have a great day.